We've seen how writers make deliberate choices regarding diction and language structures, and to either avoid or to use certain structures. But a writer also makes a deliberate choice in terms of the tense that he or she chooses. We often think that, a story must be written in the past tense, but sometimes um, writers choose to use the present tense. Um, it gives a sense of immediacy. In other words, you put right into a situation. You're with the characters right there in the present. It draws the reader in. It is also called dramatic narrative. In other words, it's giving you this dramatic sense of being part of what's happening right now. So it's directly immersive. It throws us into the situation. And the reader is directly placed in action. In other words, he can start contributing. And the explanations come later. In other words, we now experience with these characters what's happening, and then later we will start understanding what is really going on, or there will be a continuation of certain things that are touched upon, such as themes, for instance. And it builds suspense, obviously, because as I said, it's dramatic narrative. Just to give you a little example of using the present tense, um, here we've got a, an extract about a little girl uh, and her sibling who's riding in a streetcar. Cordelia and I are riding on the streetcar, going downtown, as we do on winter Saturdays. So they are in the streetcar, they are going downtown. The streetcar is muggy, with twice breathed air and the smell of wool. Can you see how he brings us into the present? That is how it is there. This is what you need to smell when you're sitting here with us. Cordelia sits with nonchalance, nudging me with her elbow now and then, staring blankly at other people with her grey-green opaque eyes, opaque and glinting as metal. She can outstare anyone, and I am almost as good. So we got here an extract from Margaret Atwood's book, Cat's Eye, and we can almost feel the children's the atmosphere in the streetcar, what it smells like, what the two of them are doing. They're nudging each other, they're talking, and it gives us a real sense of immediacy. A writer can also choose the past tense for various reasons. Very often, using the past tense can suggest a bit of background information. It can introduce a certain incident, can introduce certain motifs or themes that will be used later on. It allows for flashbacks and flash forwards, and it can interrupt predictable situations. So let's look at another little extract from Harold Fry here, where Harold Fry, it's at the beginning of the novel, and we have just seen it is written from a past tense point of view. It is we've seen Harold Fry doing things around the house. We see his wife Maureen being around, them not talking to each other really, and them doing the everyday routine things like mowing the lawn, for instance. And then, of course, what happened at that, I'm saying happened because it's all in the past tense. What happened at that certain stage in the story was that Harold received a letter. And that is the letter that set the action in motion, where Harold now starts walking and doesn't stop. So we are being told about the letter and the influence that it had on Harold. The letter that would change everything arrived on a Tuesday. It was an ordinary morning in April that smelled of clean washing and grass cuttings. Can you see how that tells us about the background? On a Tuesday, you would smell washing, you would smell grass cuttings, because that's what they would do either on the Monday or on the Tuesday morning, but it would just have been done. So also suggesting to us that the two of them sort of were doing their own thing. They weren't really doing things together. And Harold Fry sat at the breakfast table, freshly shaved, in a clean shirt and tie, with a slice of toast that he wasn't eating. So can you see that the past tense here can give us a lot of background information in terms of what would happen after that. Sometimes the past tense is used for plausibility, not for background information, but for plausibility. If something supernatural happened to you at a certain stage, and you tell about what happened at a certain time, something extraordinary happened to you, it was a miracle or some supernatural encounter or something, and you write about it, and you write it as if it happened in the past tense. It gives the idea that it's plausible. It is not something supernatural. It really happened to you. Although it is supernatural, although it sounded strange, it actually happened to you. It gives you that impression. I muttered, knocking my knuckles through the glass and stretching an arm out to seize the importunate branch, instead of which my fingers closed on the fingers of a little ice-cold hand. The intense horror of nightmare came over me. I tried to draw back my arm, but the hand clung to it, and a most melancholy voice sobbed, "Let me in, let me in." So it's a little extract from Wuthering Heights. It's clearly a supernatural kind of experience or a flight of the imagination, but the thing is, writing it in the past tense and just as though it happened, it gives a sense of plausibility. Sometimes writers wish to mix their tenses. It happens especially when using the past tense and the past perfect. The past perfect suggesting that it happened even before then. And it gives us the idea of interconnectedness of events, or that something is so strong in the memory of the person that it's part of the past tense experience. So they can do that, in other words, mixed tenses to add past perfect, as I said, of an accident or a funeral. For instance, you give a past tense account of a funeral, but then you also suggest through the past perfect how this person died. For instance, the person thinking back of the accident that had happened, that had caused the death, for instance, of this person. So you mix those. So it's for cause and effect that you can use it, to show that events are interlocked. That, in other words, if that memory of, say, for instance, the accident is so vivid in your head, that is actually part of your past tense experience at the funeral. Do you understand? So the two events are in two different tenses, but it's part of who you are, and it's in your memory, and it's there. It's indelible. So it can also give a haunting, irrevocable quality of something that is living in the memory of the writer. Here is an example of where tenses are mixed to suggest interlocking events, like I've just explained. That morning, she had run her usual route to the store. As she turned the corner, she had come upon a disturbing scene. Apart from the glass and metal sprayed across the road like some outgoing tide's deposit, there were what looked like two stretchers, mostly eclipsed from view by a swarm of emergency workers. Now safely home, she decided to lie down, all the while trying to get that scene out of her mind. Just an example there of mixing tenses, so which is of course, also the choice of the writer.